Good evening, my dear colleagues. Welcome to another Inget Zoom Serious Talk. Today, our guest is, well, she's not a guest, in fact, she's one of the hosts, is Defne Akıncı Midas. Defne Midas, Defne Hocam, I'm going to say, has been a teacher of English as a foreign language for about 30 years. She holds a Master of Education degree in TESOL and Computer Assisted Language Learning from Manchester University, UK. She's currently at the Language Preparatory School at the Middle East Technical University. She has worked as a course coordinator dealing with course and syllabus design, assessment, and evaluation. She has also been a teacher trainer for the newly hired teachers, a writing tutor for the academic writers in the university community, a materials developer for various groups, and a researcher of curriculum and assessment tools in the institution. My God, she has lots of different roles, right? She's currently one of the board members of INGET. The title of her talk this evening is Let's Speak, Let's Speak. Thank you, dear Defne Hocam, for being with us, and welcome again. The screen is all yours.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be here. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here. And well, this time I'm going to talk about speaking, the speaking skill. The title doesn't let you understand anything, right? It's such a you've been wondering. It's just speaking. That's what I'm going to talk about. And well, it's a pleasure, as I said, to be here as in the Zoom series. And can you imagine? It's more than 100. It's just unbelievable. We're doing so great. All right. So first of all, I'm not going to start with an outline. I'm going to jump into what kind of activities we do. Let me turn the page. Activities in which my students, let me remind you, of course, I go in and out to class. I also teach classes. I didn't mention that, did I? I also teach classes. These days, I teach a lot of different levels of classes, and I'm happy about it. I've got elementary level students. I've got what we call elementary. Of course, it may be different from one school to another, but I've got university level academic teaching and presentation skills. I've got all sorts of things. So I've got mainly speaking and writing. This time, some course books and materials I've used got me thinking about what speaking is and what kind of training I had when I first started out. What kind of training I gave the others, and what I'm trying to do or failing to do in the classroom. Failures teach a lot. I'm going back to basics, and I did some soul searching, and let's do that together now. Activities in which my students speak in class. So let's think about, when do we get our students to speak? And then we're going to consider think over them and question them to understand whether they can be seen as actual speaking. Are they speaking, or are they just making noises? Is that just moving their lips, or is that really speaking? So what is speaking in the first place? So anyway, let's start. In my class, students answer the teacher's questions during the lesson. So we say, when I'm checking the roster, I call out names, and they say, we are here, he's absent, that kind of thing. And they answer other questions. Can you turn the page to, so do you have your books? And they say, yes. May I come in? Oh, yes. Or may I do this? May I open the window? No, that kind of thing. So that's one. They make noises, they answer my questions. Giving answers to questions, but e.g. grammar, vocabulary, reading comprehension, questions, fill in the blank, for example. I say question 1, they say went. Question 2, they say, I don't know, has been. That's something that they do. They say something aloud. During pair work, they talk to each other, like when they're comparing answers, brainstorming. But here, I doubt very much whether they use English or not. Maybe some words, but the whole statements, sentences, I'm not very sure during pair work, group work, when they're putting their heads together. But acting out their dialogues and interviews in front of the classroom, or maybe when they're sitting, but we ask them to write the dialogues, create a dialogue, and they act it out. Sometimes they read them. Sometimes they do interviews. Is that speaking? Doing 1 or 2 minute talks, taking turns in a group or maybe solo, giving a talk, using PowerPoint. Is that speaking? Discussing a topic in pairs of groups, not of or groups, pairs or groups, when they discuss a topic, do they use English? Parts of English. Working on an information gap activity in pairs or groups, in some books, they still have them. Half of the pictures with you, half the pictures with the other, and they have to fill in the blanks. And playing games, charades, hot seat, I don't know, other types of games. Hangman is no longer used, I guess, but what we call hangman, don't hangman these days. We shouldn't be hanging anyone. That kind of game. There, English emerges a lot. Any others? I couldn't think of any other activity in which my students made noise, created some kind of noise out of their, coming out of their mouths. In most of these, we tend to hear kind of English. That is satisfactory, most of them, when we put a tick. But does that count? Do all of these count as speaking practice, real speaking? So what is speaking in the first place? What does speaking mean? What are we trying to teach them? When you have a communicative purpose, do we like the word communicative? I don't know. In my time, it was the communicative method. And, speaking was the skill. That method really worked on very well. It has developed a lot in time. It has changed. Some grammar went into it, but still, there's communicative intent, message, purpose, whatever. You need to have a comment. You need to, want to communicate your ideas. You want to be understood, express some idea, right? Function, right? And you have some listeners. You have some listeners or audience, one or more, who do not know your message. They don't know it. When they hear it, they may say they knew it beforehand, but they didn't know you were going to say that in the first place. So there's an information gap. Even if you know the message, you decided afterwards. But they have a purpose to listen. They lend an ear and say they're listening for something. They're listening to you for a particular purpose. Everybody's here tonight. They're curious about what I might say about speaking to solve all their problems. But I'm here only to make it even worse. Anyway, let's enjoy our night. Let me continue. Now, you listen to others' response. You said something, they listened to you, they had a purpose to listen, and then now you're looking at them. I'm checking right now, I'm checking around to see whether I get any responses. I'm looking at the chat box. We want a response. I said something. Did the message go? Did it arrive at the place I intended to? So it could be verbal, non-verbal, facial expressions. I'm checking around. I'm trying to see some eyes and movement, maybe laughter, maybe some other thing, maybe a comment, something to check the comprehension and reaction. And you may ask for clarification or provide clarification if somebody else asks you to do it. Somebody may be saying, Defne, what are you doing? Any kind of noise we make is speaking. What is this you're talking about? And then I would understand, now I get it. Let me talk about it again. So it's a two-way thing. there's it goes back and forth, even if you're speaking alone, which is, now I'm giving a talk, but still, it's two ways, although this one is CFR calls it transactional, right? Interactional, transactional. Here, transactional. I'm transacting, giving away ideas, but they're bouncing back as well. There's kind of a ping pong game going on. No matter what you do, it's never one way. And then you focus on the message. We're listening for the message, not compliance to subject-verb agreement rules. I may have made some mistakes along the way. They didn't prevent me to say things, and communicate my ideas, and you haven't been paying attention to it. Sometimes I've got a few mistakes here and there. You're not paying attention. You may have noticing it, but you're not paying attention. Nobody stopped me to say something about it. I may have stopped and started my sentence again. Nobody said, hey, what are you doing? Your grammar is poor. So when you're speaking, the message is important. We've been talking about the message. If we keep this in mind, then we can design our speaking tasks, right? And activities to improve aspects of speaking so that our students are stronger in getting their message across, getting understood, comprehended through, good pronunciation, etc. So let's remember, I just mentioned this before, but I just want to show you the beautiful pictures. I spent some time on, finding them, so I'm going to mention them. So it could be, any kind of speaking could be between two people. And when you think of it, in our books, there are lots of pair work, doing you are this and you are this, you get together, pair work. You're going to ask and answer questions, create a dialogue, blah, blah. They could be asking and answering questions, interviews, or they could be making comments about themselves, etc. It could be more than one. It could be more than two. They could be discussing on topics. They could be having a debate. They could be, asking and answering, but in a different pattern. It could be a single person, just like in this case, talking about a topic, but still there could be an interaction. So we've got a lot of things to think about. It's a mess, I must say. It's really hard. There's so many things we need to think about. Let's add more to this. What types of speaking are there? One, it could be rehearsed. Let me admit this has been rehearsed. I haven't memorized it. I just wanted to know what I would be talking about in each page. Of course, I'm not saying anything I rehearsed, but still it helped me. I decided not to say those things, but I'm saying completely different things, but I know my way. You rehearse it. Sometimes you're prepared. Rehearse and prepared may be quite similar, but at least when you're going to complain about something, for example, you go to the post office, you're going to complain about a cargo that's got lost, you are prepared about what you're saying. You don't rehearse it at home, but yes, I'm going to say this and this, the date and what I expected, is trendial, and that's prepared. And some of them, I love this word just to show off that I know the word impromptu, or impromptu, they say it, is without planning. If somebody takes the floor, they say something, it could be a dialogue, it could be conversation, or it could be a talk like this. Our students find this one pretty daunting if they're not experienced, and if they're perhaps shy, because this speaking is not only a skill, like it is a skill, but you practice and you get better, but there's other things that are at play, the personality. If you're not talkative, would you believe it? I'm a very shy person. I'm a very quiet person, but that was when I was young. I grew up. And of course I started to get really chatty. That's the telling sign that I've grown up. Anyway, so I was pretty quiet, but when I had to, I did speak. Some students have to have the conditions to speak. That doesn't mean to say that they won't be able to speak English, but they're just silent. They speak when they need to. We need to, remember, or sometimes I have a very talkative student, for instance, but he's not saying anything, a lot of gibberish. We've got to be careful about that. All right. Yeah, they don't have the luxury of being shy. But, being in class helped me a lot, let me say. All right. Now I'm moving on to some cases where we have a situation, for instance, grammar. I don't know, Jump. I prepared this particular when I had you in mind, So you can see this scared, emoji there. You were on my mind. Let's say we want to get the students to practice and produce the language elements like grammar. Of course, rules play a lot of role. We've just taught it, like if type 2. Or as you can see in the picture, we wouldn't ask questions like this, but we say, which verb, which form of the verb you would put and everything, and then we ask them to use it in a dialogue or something. We're looking for rules, accuracy somehow. Once you teach them, you want to look for it. Comprehensibility is important when they're speaking. If for spoken mode, for example, I'd like to have some contractions, like I'd like to. Usually they don't say I would like to, particularly with an L. I would like to do. You'd hear I'd like to. That's an acceptable way of saying. Anyway, pronunciation, intonation, fluency, again, comprehensibility within fluency. And then I would also talk about listening comprehension. Would they understand if somebody used if type 2 for the right meaning? And then self-correction would be important. Peer correction would be necessary, and focus on meaning and function as well as form if I were to teach it for the first time. Now, what am I going to do? There's so much to do. Let's see. Let's say I'm writing. I have a short answer for an information question. Because I'm going to get the students to practice simple present question types. This is a particular kind of question types, making questions. Usually, let me not show this, let's go back. Usually what we do is write questions, write questions. For this, we write a sentence, we underline a part to say, write a question so that you can get the answer to this portion of the sentence. It's pretty kind of rote grammar thing. That has a place, in class, arguably. Some people may say, you can do away with it, whatever. Formation of questions is always troublesome, because what you do is, for a long while, you work on subject plus verb, the word order in statements, and then now you want to spoil it all, and try to get that right, both of them right. Anyway, so what I thought, instead of, or on top of doing that, I want to make this into kind of a speaking activity, involving listening, involving actual speaking for meaning, involving all those things I've been bragging about. Let's see if I was able to do it. Now, the idea is to get them to practice forming questions. Okay, so what the teacher would do is to write a very short answer, just the answer. For an information question, we're not looking for a yes/no question, obviously. Otherwise, the answer would be yes. And what kind of question would I have asked? Any kind of question would work with a yes/no question. But here it's we're looking for content. The class will guess the possible question or questions that would elicit that answer. Each pair, for instance, you can put them into pair, should come up with 2 questions, at least. Of course, this depends on what kind of thing you put on the board, but if for this one, I decided to. The aim is to find the actual question or questions that elicits that answer. On top of that, you can say, tell the students that they may write the questions down as they're preparing them. That would be written in order to learn, of course, not writing as composition. But when it's their turn to tell the answer, I would tell them to look at their partner and ask the question and get the answer without reading, but, with the right intonation. All right, and listen to show that you're listening to the partner's answer. Let's do a very easy one. Here's my answer. What is or are the possible question or questions? Think of in simple terms, simple present. They're learning, like, beginners, elementary. In your level, you can ask so many different questions. What might be the questions? How many pets do you have? How many languages can you speak? Oh, I got a can. Wonderful. Okay. Any others? How many apples do you eat a day? So it's definitely how many, right? We can't really move around. What time do you go to bed? Oh, yes. What time do you go to bed on Saturdays? 2. How many sisters have you got? 2. Yes. What time is it? 2. Okay. Do you know the number of cats? 2. Do you know? Okay. How many eyes have we got? Oh, yeah. All right. Right. Okay. So have we got how many and what time? How often do you eat? 2. Right. It's very good. Very good. So it depends on the level of the students. You may get them to produce many different types of questions. But then what I would do is to, get them to ask these to each other. So they would have to practice the pronunciation and intonation as well. So for example, how many eyes have we got? 2. You might even get them to practice giving an answer to, is she 2 or 3 years old? 2. Yes, that's a good one with alternatives. I said yes, no questions, but this is not a yes, no question. Say an alternative question. Good. Oh, yeah. I hadn't imagined this. It's better than what I thought. Okay, good. So you can get them to do that. You can also get them to say, well, if the answer is obvious, how many eyes do we have? 2. You say, the answer, you give an answer to show that you would expect the other to know the answer, and you say, why are we doubting this? 2. Or, you have a tone to say that you only have 2 or just 2. Do you know the car prices? Yeah. How many cars do you have? 2. Just 2. Right. Okay. So you can change the answer to just 2, only 2, depending on the kind of the level and the students in my dreams too. Yes. Then you can ask them to perhaps change that, and you can put different answers. Of course, you need to be careful. If it's low level, you need to check what type of questions. It shouldn't be really complicated. But even creating a question can be a little bit kind of meaningful. And you can get them to actually act it out without reading, because when they're reading, we somehow lose the intonation and they get used to reading, not saying things. When we're speaking, we tend to look in the eyes, right? Look in the face. And when we have some gestures, and when you start to look at somebody, you start to make the gestures and all the mimics. Otherwise, their heads are down and they're just reading. And sometimes, I don't know if this happens to you, they're reading their dialogue, they're reading the wrong lines. They skip a line, but they don't realize it. So, do you have a dog? Red. How many? I have just one. It's just totally, and I say, teacher, didn't you like it? It's not, I'm not there to like it in the first place. But I don't understand anything. It was a totally different world. They're not listening to each other when they're reading. Anyway, how are we going to give feedback? So you gave me a lot of questions. Imagine you said them aloud. I would first focus on the student's question. And bye-bye, Sevgi Hocam. Thanks for being here. Focus on the student's question and answer performance, first of all, and then meaning, intonation, and pronunciation. I would ask them to do it, and then comment on that. And then focus on some prominent language points there, depending on our focus. When would you do it in this kind of activity? During their performance? Immediately after each pair performing? After the whole class has completed their performance? I would just say immediately after each pair. I wouldn't stop their talk, but this is not a very long talk anyway, just a question and an answer. After each pair, I would say, all right, the question was right. It is eliciting the thing I'm looking for, but hey, let's focus on this and that. And there are some methods for that as well. You can go with, well, you said this, but I think it should be this. You can write it on the board and say, well, there's something wrong there. Which one do you think so? Especially if you have the samples on the board and you can say, can you compare the two? I wonder what's missing. I wonder what's different. You can push them to think. Or come up to the point where you say, you can't write, so there's a word missing, I can't continue. Could you correct it or add the word? Or ask them to rewrite it. Was there something wrong? There's something missing in that sentence. Do you think the verb is okay? Do you think, you can give some clues and they try out different ones and come with the correct answer, perhaps. Here, that's not, since this focus is still on grammar, perhaps that's not a big issue, but in the coming ones, it could be a big issue. Let's go on. I have another example. This time, you may remember, let me go back and I'll give you the context. We've just practiced, have you ever? Experiences, have you ever eaten couscous? Have you ever been to America? Have you ever driven a Ferrari? 5 times, just yesterday. And what happens is the books also teach them, when you go into details, there's some very interesting thing. Have you ever been bungee jumping? And somebody says, oh yeah, you want to go into details. So, really? When? Where did you go? Who was with you? How did you feel? You want to learn, but you go on to shift to simple past. And I just don't want to say, think of an experience, start with ask a present perfect question, give an answer, and then start to give it I just want to go the other way around. The teacher says, I'll tell you about my experience in doing an activity. I'm going to use the simple past. And I've got 3 pictures here showing 3 different experiences in life. From what I tell them, I would like the students to guess what my experience was by asking, have you ever, blah, blah, blah. Have you, blah, blah, blah. I want them to say the present perfect question. Why would I do this? I want them to listen. I want them to think. I want them to use this present perfect because they'd rather not use it, but go on to, now, but they know simple past, they want to do it that way, but I want them to use the present perfect. I will use the simple past. And then, of course, I will ask them to do the same activity. They will show a few pictures, blah, blah. So let me show you how it works. It was very enjoyable. It was last month. I went there with my colleagues from Inged. It was in Kayseri. and the mountain was unbelievable. What would be the question? Have you ever climbed a mountain? Yes. I'm actually lying. We went there by car, but still, it looks very romantic. I would, I could just Photoshop myself there looking down. We did stop and look down actually somewhere, so I can just, it counts, right? Yes. So, my answer, have you ever climbed a mountain? Say, yes, I have, and I enjoyed it so much. All right. So I would then ask the students to do the same thing. I've just changed a little bit what we have in the books. It's just the dialogues are always the same in all the books, just a little bit. It was not very expensive, didn't have to think much. I just wanted to add a purpose, an information gap. Everybody in the classroom would be listening, hopefully. Not only one person or two persons. Usually the teacher listens, right? The teacher listens for the students, pairs doing something. The others are waiting for their turns. Oh, come on, the teacher, they're waiting for the teacher to do the correction. They're not involved at all. But if you do it this way, then everybody has to listen because it's for everyone to guess. You can put them in teams. You can have more pictures. I just put 3 here. More pictures. You use one. You get the others to use the others. Choose one picture. Talk about your experience. And, or they can choose a picture these days. They might have the pictures on their phones and get them to put them all together and use it. It's very cheap and possible. Doesn't take much. So here the focus is on the students' answers or question. And that first I would focus on that and then focus on the prominent language points. The same thing, the same idea here. If there are no questions, let's go on to sample 3. Let me set the context again. In a lot of the books, especially at the beginning, elementary and beginner, maybe some pre-intermediate too, they do the interview part. And they have about 12 questions. The books give us a lot of, right questions, or they give a list of 15 questions. How often do you take a shower? How often? Because we want to practice always, twice a month, once a week, every now and then, whatever. So we want to have the frequency adverbs and frequency expressions. That's why there's a list of things. How often do you eat eggs per week? How often do you go to a cafe with your classmates? How often usually they're in the book. They ask you, the students, to fill in the answers for themselves first, which is great. They think about it, and then they ask the questions to their friends. The idea is to get them to say these a lot and hear them and take a note, and they're supposed to be comparing, which ones were the common ones, which ones were different. And they're supposed to say, we both take a shower every other day, but usually they don't come up, they say everything is the same, nothing is the same, whatever, because it's tedious, it's the same, and it takes hours to complete this. Also, you don't know if they're using English between themselves. Yes, some questions can be offensive as well. Yeah, that's right. You would have to change them, maybe go over them, change them if you know your class. In our classes, we wanna hear about it because we wanna help them, you see. But of course, it is kind of, you need to be choosy, especially brushing your teeth, those kind of things. Do you brush your teeth, brush your hair? Anyway, this one I could never work at. I mean, it's under the speaking area, but it's just reading, writing. Next to it, they just write a 3 in a number. They're not practicing what we want them to practice. Their lips are not moving really. And 12, 15 questions, it's really tedious. They do, yes, they do lie about it when they answer it. That's right. Yeah. These days, I must say, eating eggs is also a cause of concern. Because university students may not be able to find enough money to find, or how often do you eat at the cafeteria here? We ask, and they sometimes say we can't afford it. So what we do is sometimes we say, well, what can I do? We need to ask some questions. We try to be less sensitive sometimes, yes, but they could ask about their observations, yes. Anyway, let's assume that we've come up with a good set of questions, but still there's 10, 12 questions. Why? Because you want to have a variety of answers. You want them to use a variety of frequency expressions. If you want them to use both, neither, whatever. But what I thought was to, well, instead of not achieving anything, let's achieve something. Let's turn this into speaking. They could interview a celebrity. Role play. Role play would be great. You could change certain questions. That's right. Okay. So I thought, well, why do we spend 12, why do we do 12 questions? Just 1 or 2 would be enough. So what I would do is to tell the students to answer the questions themselves first. Why? Because they learn about the questions. They go through all of them and they know. And then I say, all right, every student or every pair, it could be pair work, have one of the questions. I could cut them up. I give question 1 to one pair, question 2 the other, and then they could just mingle. Everybody's asking a question and getting an answer. So everybody is answering all the questions, but they're collecting data about one item. Of course, I mingle around them as well, because otherwise they show the question, they read, and they just put a tick. And I says, no, that's not what you're doing. This is, they have to ask the question, listen to the question, and give the answer in English, and then they put a tick, and they tally their answers. So, and then at the end, like in about 5 minutes, and a lot of noise later, what you do is say, oh, have you finished? Just have a seat, count your tallies, tally your answers. So I say, okay, what was the maximum number? Which item got the maximum number? Which is the most frequently done activity? Which is the minimum number? Which is, what was the most frequent activity? We just comment about it, and that's it, finished. We may find it very interesting. We may not find it interesting. It's not very important. This part is, I've already accomplished my goal. Everybody listened, everybody talked, and they tallied something. That's it, At least they did speak a little bit, listened to each other. There was meaning in the forefront. The teacher's role here is we need to go around and mingle in the classroom, just like the students. You have to be around them to keep it alive, and keep it, keep their English alive. And you can, eavesdrop, and you can help them. Maybe the instructions weren't clear. Maybe they get tired towards the end. They want to, go switch to Turkish. I say, let's quickly finish this. So you're there to keep them going. Check and make sure they use English correctly. Focus on task accomplishment at the end. Have they been able to come up with the answers? Otherwise, it's really one by one. You can't listen in on everybody, but go into what you have heard as you go around. Went around the groups, what you have heard, maybe pronunciation, maybe the sentence, maybe they did make the question very well, or they can sometimes make up new versions. Oh yeah, to make all the students speak, it's really hard. But if you perhaps pair them up, maybe that's why I thought pairing might be useful. But of course, size is always an issue. I thought maybe you could give some of the questions to half the class, some of the questions to the other half, and then get the data and put them all together. The idea is to at least get them to actually say the question a few times, because then automaticity perhaps form. And then they would listen to at least 2-3 people, even, when you're around, you may not, but, they will listen to 2-3 people, and that's it. That's a practice. Of course, we're hoping for the top performance, but even that I'm fine with it. All right, another one. I copied instructions for a role play. This is a little higher activity. This is from a commercial book, and I'm not going to tell which one it is. It says it's a role play activity. It tells the pairs to do things, to role play and do these things, perform them. Here, on the previous page, we could see we did it listening, and you see how greetings are done. And here, it asks them to role play the following conversation. Remember to include greetings and endings in your role play. It's not here because we want them to remember or check from the book, and choose the one they would like to use. So at the beginning, assume that there's a greeting, and then you say you meet your friend at school, you have tickets to a concert on Thursday evening, invite your friend. So they have to change this and add an invitation, a greeting, and then say that you have tickets, invite. B is supposed to be free on Thursday evening and respond to the invitation. So if they're free, we probably they will accept it. And the ending will say, well, they're supposed to choose an ending. What happens, and another pair is asked in the book to watch their performance and give feedback to them on the following. Are they using the appropriate greetings? This is something we do a lot, right, in speaking, especially in group work like this, where you have a lot of groups going on. You can't be everywhere all the time, so you can have other pairs watching. So one pair is acting, the other is watching, and then they will switch roles probably. Are they using appropriate greetings? Which ones? First asking if the friend is available, adding why when they said yes, explaining why when they're saying no, because they might even turn them down. Even if they're free, they may turn them down. I'm not doing anything. But they hear about it and say, I'll pass. Why? We want them to say, although of course it's not here, but it is in the listening sample task. Now, what happens is, this is all very nice, but it's not quite personalized. When you listen, let me hear what you're doing in front of the class if you want them to. You're listening to the same thing all the time. And you're not sure if they're listening to each other. And in fact, they'll be reading without any intonation. So if you want them to perform to the whole class and really put themselves into it, it might be a good idea to change and maybe alter the details in each pair's roles. Sometimes the book gives us one good idea. You might ask them change them a little bit. You meet somebody else somewhere else. You have something to something on such and such evening. Change a little bit. It'll come to the same thing, but maybe the greeting and the way they act may change a little bit. So change the pair's roles, distribute it as such, and you can ask the rest of the class to infer what is the relationship between these two people as they're listening. Who are they? Are they colleagues, classmates, brother and sister? Where are they? Do they get along with each other? Why didn't the person, she was free on Thursday, there's free tickets, and she didn't accept it, and she gave us an excuse. Do you believe them? This is real life, isn't it? Not everybody is nice in real life. Were the greetings and responses appropriate to their type of relationship? Did they pick the right ones? Or were they just say, hey, yo, to a teacher, for example? something that's not very, or was there, I don't know, the way they turned the other down, was it too curt all of a sudden, because I don't want to go out, or who wants to go out with you, or, you know. Here, you can add a spice a little bit, because then they will, you know, when there's guessing, when they're speculating a bit more, perhaps they might speak a lot as well here. My last one is for getting the students to present on a topic for 1 or 2 minutes, with or without visual aids. We do assign them with topics, and they do some presentations. The other students are asked to listen. Now, put your hand on your heart and tell me, how many times did you find your audience, the students, actually listening to what the others are presenting? 1 time, maybe? 2 times in your lifetime? The teacher grades the performance based on a rubric. They're usually they usually know the rubrics and whatnot, you know, but hey, you know, they're not listening. They may listen and they may look at the slides, but they're not. Sometimes we give a rubric, we ask the students to co-rate and everything, but there's no task, there's no reason to. Sometimes they find each other's English not very nice, or boring task, whatever. I thought of this, let's see if I can fit it into a real 2-way listening. As one of the students is preparing for the presentation, they know the main point that they are practicing, right? So as they are presenting, the audience has a note-taking sheet. Get them to take notes for the content. Because remember, we listen for the content. We have a purpose. They take notes on certain points, new information, surprising information. They might write questions. Many times I ask them to write a question, but that doesn't come up very, very well. Sometimes it's related to the topic. Sometimes the student cannot make it very interesting. It's a topic that everybody knows about. They're not curious about anything. So you might say, well, at least, was there one little piece of information that was new for you? Or one surprising information? Or what would you advise, give advice to this? What would you add to this presentation? I don't know. You might get them to do these. And after they ask their questions to the presenter, if any, if you're lucky, the audience gets together and summarize their points to the class, perhaps. Everybody could talk about their notes or the questions you asked them. What was the new information? What was surprising? What was this? What was that? Aysan says, I asked them some questions after the student's presentation finishes. Yeah, so they have to listen carefully. Yeah, you know, we're trying our best to make them listen. Comment on the quality and authenticity of the information. That's also possible. Yes. They listen carefully. Yes. Okay. So I skipped too much. In the feedback, the instructor, of course, would focus the feedback on the points that the students were required to perform in the presentation. What do I mean by this is that, you know, usually in one of our courses, we usually focus on the visuals and how their speech, I don't know, relates to the visuals. In another performance, we focus on something else. So my main focus would be that. Of course, there may be many, many other things to talk about. If I want them to practice, particularly blending their speech with their visuals, I will focus on that first. And then I may talk about a few other things to make everything better, but saying too many things, telling them to do too many things may be disheartening sometimes. Too much to take in, especially in presentations. That's what I find. They cannot absorb everything, and it's a big thing. There's too much going on. Your memory, how much you rehearsed, there's too much going on, really. So it has to be focused, in my opinion. Yeah. giving them a task before, you know, purpose, right? Give them a purpose and intent, because when we're speaking and there's listening, and if there's no purpose, everything just passes by. All right. So even if you can't get them to listen to the full content with full interest, you can just say, well, just find one interesting thing, or take notes. My final one, this is the final one, I'm sorry. It's about discussion and debates. We just provide students with topics to discuss. We may have done some reading, listening to, you know, or previous brainstorming, whatever, to raise schemata, or maybe if there's no schemata, fill in the schemata first, and then, you know, so that they have an idea. Sometimes you do that. Then the students are asked to get prepared and present their viewpoints to their classmates. Usually they have role cards. They might have they may be for an idea. They may be asked to become for an idea or against an idea, whatever. Each side presents, talks about their viewpoint in accordance with criteria, with a set of criteria, not a criteria. I made a mistake there. As sufficient for building a case, right? This is what they have to do. And once they do it, especially when what we do is we focus on building a case, meaning, you know, building their own arguments, whether they're for or against, depending if they're, for example, their role requires them to support the idea of using Turkish in class. From the point of view of the student, they would have to build a case accordingly. And in building a case, we want them to do a lot, actually. That's why we give them a lot of reading. They have to really make sense. It can't be wishy-washy, it can't be just beliefs, it can't be just this, it can't be just that. So they have to be really build a strong argument with examples, and then wrap it up, and they have only 2 minutes, etc. So they're doing a lot of things. As the speaking gets longer and huge, let's say, huger, you have to focus more, I would say, on what you ask them to do. So if this was the first and the second time, I would first listen to them. After listening, I would say, well, my feedback is on how you built your case in this discussion or debate, you know, whether you were able to actually give credible evidence that your idea is something we need to listen in on. And your example, was the actual example parallel to what you said? And did you wrap it up nicely? Did you adhere to the time limits? It's really hard, really. And then there's a response part. If there's the discussion is going around, there may be a few turns. Was the response relevant? Sometimes they just say a totally different thing. I say, but, and I say totally different thing, you know, but without warning. They have to say, well, at least you're right, but when you look at it from a different angle, you know, I need to say this to refute your idea. But they don't even say that. But, you know, I need to say, well, responding to others' views is something really important. So what I would do, I would listen and focus on this, touching upon small language issues which may have hindered the flow of their talk. That's very few, though, not many, because case building is something is more important. Our purpose here. All right. Now, what I want to do is to have the last point should be the best one. I'm going to show you 2 pieces of videos. In one of them, I would like you to see how a non-English speaker, a learner, is being corrected. And focus on whether that correction actually worked. Did the student, learner or language learner, correct their language? Let me stop sharing. I have to find and let me share it. I'm just going to play a short part of series, a very old one, English. Mind Your English. Oh, I didn't check if tell me if you can hear it. All right. Well, there were some corrections going on, right? Both are teachers. One of them is the administrator, I suppose. She kept correcting him. The last one corrected, but he doesn't hear it that way. He continues, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Right. So that's, well, but he managed to communicate, right? He's a good communicator in that film. So that tells us one thing. And my final one is from, let me arrange it. Oops, sorry. It's from How I Met Your Mother. That's a more recent one. See you, Senur. And you may remember, if you're watching it again, I think the scenario, the script writers were into linguistics a lot. They keep correcting English. And in this one, I noticed that something, the reaction of about the correction. Let's have a look. And this one's a kind of a shorter one. But if you're watching, just be ears and watch how it happens. So let me turn this on. All right, because here the topic changes, so that's why it's good there. But over the series, they come up with this. He keeps correcting people's language, and they keep saying, you're correcting me all the time, because their focus is on their meaning. They don't want to hear that. There's another funny video, but I'm not going to share it because some people it may be offensive. The grammar Nazi. Please write grammar Nazi, and if you want, you can watch it. It's just about how the communication breaks down because of all the corrections. But since it has some sensitive language in it, I'd rather not share it here. Do it on your own, in your own time, if you like. The actual thing is, when we get students to practice grammar, it's not a good idea to just stop them and say, instead of saying, she likes, and you just lose the attention. It's a terrible thing when you're speaking. It's always better to do it at the end of something. Once that episode is done, the student is done, and the communicative intent is, finished. Then it may work and it may not. We just hope it may or it may not work. So speaking should not be just something to keep correct, but to practice more and more meaningfully. All right, so that was actually the very end of my talk. It's 9:30. It's just 1 hour. Well, yes, delayed feedback is much better, isn't it? When instead of cutting in on people all the time. Although some of our students might want more because they say, but I said so many things, but you just told me 2 things or 3 things. Isn't that kind of cheating? This teacher's not doing her job or so. They do the same thing with writing too. But that's to discuss in another session.
Thank
All
you,
right.
Defne Akıncı. A very, very informative, very nice presentation. Thanks a lot. I haven't noticed any questions in the chat box. Well, you have answered some of them while you were delivering your talk, or shared the remarks there. So if you have any further questions, or is that you want to share, please either raise your hand or write it in the chat box. Meanwhile, Defne Hocam, most probably when you say do not interfere or interrupt the student when they are talking, because the aim of the lesson is to talk, is to speak.
That's right.
Otherwise, if the aim of the lesson is to teach a particular grammar point, then of course you're going to correct their speech. It's inevitable.
Of course, that's what we're doing in the classroom.
Yeah.
We're
But
trying to
if there
teach what
is
works,
natural
what doesn't.
communication, then of course just keep your big nose out of their business, definitely. Burak Hocam, yes, please go ahead.
Yes, you can hear me, right?
Oh, yes,
Sure.
we can.
Okay, first of all, I would like to thank you for this great session. My question might sound a little cliche. Right now, I'm in my fourth year in the Department of ELG, and I'm an intern teacher right now at some state school, of course. I'm teaching the 7th and 8th graders, but there's a big problem because the students are not even A1. I mean, they are really right now, yes, their proficiency is not that good. And I'm afraid because I'm going to teach them a lot until the semester ends, but I'm not sure how can I keep up with the how can I say syllabus and the other objectives of the general curriculum, and how can I teach them speaking in the same way? I mean, what do you suggest? Because they're not good.
I'm not quite familiar with the kind of objectives you have. They have in Milli Eğitim Bakanlığı. So whatever I say might be. I'm not informed about it. I'm not well informed about it actually. But what I would try to do, is to be selective in my expectations, because sometimes what we do, we try to do everything, ending up with nothing. But if we select realistically, we may reach more. The students might, I don't know how many students you have. You probably have a lot of them. But still, if you could train them to do some pair work, and then maybe act out in the classroom, in front of the class, a little bit, little by little, that would work, in my opinion. Very, very short skits, very, very short ones. Get them to practice it, in pairs, and maybe get in front of the classroom. They may be shy, but still they get used to it. That's what I would do. Do you know, I finished state school, Çankaya Lisesi. It changed into Anatolian High School now. And we were about 40 when we were in secondary school. The first time I saw a language teacher was when I started secondary school. It was 6th year in my time. Now
I
it's
may
50,
answer
right?
this question if it's okay with you, because I'm familiar with the Ministry of Education.
That would be
Burak
much better.
Hocam, as you know, the national curriculum is in line with the Common European Framework of References objectives. So when you check the curriculum from the Board of Education's website, you will see that there are lots of speaking objectives. So it's not neglected, it is there. However, unfortunately, our teachers, on purpose or subconsciously, do not know that the curriculum is communicative, functional, notional, skills-based. They still get their book and still teach structure all the time. That's why when students cannot move on to any other level other than A1, because the teachers cannot leave their old habits behind. It's not the curriculum, it is the student's background because of the teachers. I'm sorry to say this. I'm not a defender of the Ministry of Education, but I strongly suggest you should visit the website, download the program, Müfredat, and it's free. And it's a PDF format, so it downloads very quickly, very easily. Please check the objectives. All of the objectives are like in line with the descriptors of CFR. So all of the skills are equally covered. That is one of the main issues. Defne Hocam, by the way, people are asking for your email. Can you please write it in the chat box?
Of course, okay.
Maybe they want to reach you, maybe to ask for something. Yes. Well, Burak Hocam, they usually don't know that the curriculum is available on the Board of Education Talim Terbiye website. They don't even know that. It's a pity, isn't it? They look at the course book and they think that the course book is the syllabus. Course book reflects the syllabus. Course books have a syllabus. But syllabus is just when to teach what and how. The objectives are given in the main program. Please check it. You will find out all the writing is a little bit neglected compared to the other skills, but they try to treat all of the skills equally. Yeah. Thank you. I also find games very productive in the classroom if we want to encourage our students to speak. Because when they're playing a game, they focus their attention on having fun rather than making mistakes. And they can also get a different personality. If they feel a bit shy, they can always be someone else. They can, for example, I'm Aydan, but call me Nadia. In this lesson, I'm going to be Nadia, okay? So whatever I do, whatever mistakes I make, it's not me, it's Nadia making them. So that is also a possibility. Yes, entertainment. I totally agree with that. And there is a game, I don't know whether you have ever seen that or not. It is, you're in a country where no one speaks English. You don't know their language, they don't know your language. So you need to communicate only using your gestures, body language, and making noises. Onomatopoetic words are different in different countries, but when you make the sound, the symbolism, for example, if you say gırç 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 gırç, fish, people will understand it's the water, the sound, because when you make shh, it's a sound symbolism is pretty clear. People love playing this game because there's no language involved and it underlines the importance of nonverbal communication. We do that a lot, even in our native language. If you're with a close friend or with a family member, just an eye roll or a smirk, it gives a very clear message. It's much more influential than the word itself, right? So you may also want to use that game in the classroom, but of course you need to be a part of it. I have noticed that if the teacher says, you play, I will watch, then students feel shy. But if you do play together with them, and you make a clown of yourself, laughing at yourself, then it eases the tension, you know, they get more comfortable. Ah, even the teacher can do that. So I will also try, you know, that kind of thing. Yeah. Defne Hocam, I don't know how to thank you. Wonderful
My
presentation.
pleasure.
No questions. In fact, well, in fact, there wasn't anything to ask because you gave us wonderful ideas, right? So how we can now on start looking at our course books a little bit more critically and try to make a few adaptations, maybe, you know, just to make it more, I don't know, fun, enjoyable, encouraging. Mm. So that was a wonderful session, and as you can see in the chat box, people are thanking you.
Thank you very much. You were great. There were some comments. I followed the comments as well.
Yeah.
So I don't
Well,
feel alone, you see, always, when you're talking, you're looking for some movement, something. Thank you very much.
thank you. Thank you again. And as usual, my dear colleagues, I thank you for being with us, being together. As you know, sharing is caring. So we shared some experiences, ideas, and next week we're going to be with another guest. But this time we will have ustalarla söyleşi rather than a Zoom series. So that next Friday is going to be a bit different. So take very good care of yourselves. Stay safe, stay healthy, and don't forget the motto of Inget. Together we stand. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.